And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will kick off the summit with a power panel session highlighting the legal developments in fintech, transactions, tokenization, and litigation. And without any further ado, let's join me to welcome the moderator for this session. Let us welcome Basil Hwang, Managing Partner of Hauzen LLP, to be up on stage to introduce his panel. A big round of applause.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being here this morning. I'd like to introduce we look forward to a very exciting and, as I've been promised in quotes, a spicy discussion this morning about the fintech market in Hong Kong. So without further ado, I'd like to invite my fellow panelists on the stage. First of all, we have Kevin Lee. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Gate Hong Kong. Kevin joined Gate Hong Kong, the Hong Kong entity of the Gate Group, in 2023 as Chief Executive Officer. He's an early adopter in cryptocurrency and digital assets since 2014, was the head of sales trading of the first ever SFC licensed digital asset trading platform in Hong Kong. And he's got more than 15 years of experience in algorithmic trading. Before joining Gate, he was working with major financial institutions such as BNP Paribas, Macquarie Group, JP Morgan Chase, and he's launched Yelp in the region, and he holds a degree in business administration and also another degree in software engineering from the Hong Kong U. So Kevin, please, without further. Next to join us is Sanjeev Aaron Williams. I think both Kevin and Sanjeev are quite well known in the legal media circles. Sanjeev is a commercial litigation solicitor from international Hong Kong law firms. He leveraged law with business studies, entrepreneurship, and tech. He's fascinated by startups and follows the Hong Kong startup scene. In addition, he writes on geopolitical risk and the digital economy. His writings have appeared in World Money Laundering Report, China Daily, and the South China Morning Post. He was also a media partner for Bitcoin Asia 2024. So Sanjeev, please. And last but certainly not least is Nickolas Sam, who is a partner with our firm. Nick is been with our firm since 2018. He's admitted in more jurisdictions than I can count, but amongst them is the Marshall Islands. He's one of only two Marshall Islands lawyers in this, not just in Hong Kong, but in this part of the world. And he is he's been ranked every year since 2020 in Chambers and Partners for his expertise in Marshall Islands law. So Nick, please join us. So of course, the topic we're covering today is fintech law developments in Hong Kong. There's been a lot of news and controversy in the fintech and virtual assets markets. A lot of developments in Hong Kong as well. And so I will be handing the mic first over to Sanjeev to give us a bit of a rundown on some of the developments. But it would be remiss of us if we're talking about fintech, the tech in fintech, not to also touch on AI, because that is a game-changing, it's changing as I'm sure many of you here are aware in the financial industry, it's changing the way in which finance is done. So we'll touch on AI in the tech part of fintech as well later on. Without further ado, Sanjeev, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Basil. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts. I'm going to take you for a regional tour of crypto. You're going to be staying in Hong Kong, you're going to be traveling to the BRICS countries, you're going to be traveling to Dubai and back again. So the first thing I wanted to do was to give you a very, very big picture. And what you're looking at is a diagram that was prepared by Gartner, who are the IT advisory specialists. And straight off the bat, I'd like to issue a disclaimer that this panel do not necessarily agree with this chart. It's called the hype cycle for Web3 and blockchain 2024. It's a great looking thing, and Gartner produces this every year. So the 2024 edition is looking at where they think we stand on Web3 and blockchain. If you look at the horizontal axis, you'll see that is time. If you look at the vertical axis, it says expectations. It can also say visibility. And you'll see here that on this chart, which is shaped like a roller coaster, you have various dots showing where we stand or where Gartner thinks we stand on the development of crypto. And you'll see that these dots are colored. So you have, for example, the white dots, which suggest adoption and maturity and relevance within the next 2 years. The light blue dots are showing maturity and adoption within the next 2 to 5 years, and the black dots showing maturity and adoption between the next 5 to 10 years. And then you have this hazard warning sign on the left, which says metaverse, which was a buzzword for a time, but seems to have gone quiet. And then you have something called obsolete before the plateau, and they call that the zero-knowledge proofs. It's entirely arguable whether that's correct. Across the horizontal axis, you'll see 5 sectors: the innovation trigger, the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, the slope of enlightenment, and the plateau of productivity. And the dots on this diagram are located at various parts. And for some reason, Gartner has taken a somewhat negative view of things, and most of the dots are in the trough of disillusionment in relation to crypto and blockchain, whereas there's not much going on in the innovation trigger. There are some problems with this chart. It's only a representation. The chart has been criticized, and it always has been criticized, for not being based on scientific evidence and not being based on data analytics. Secondly, the terms that they use, peak of inflated expectations, trough of disillusionment, slope of enlightenment, are misleading. Does that mean, for example, that if you see something like blockchain, decentralized exchanges, tokenization, and Web3, if you see that in the trough of disillusionment, does that mean that you're never going to touch them? Doesn't really necessarily follow. Then, when you see the slope of enlightenment and plateau of productivity, that I would agree with to some extent. I think, for example, you can see cryptocurrencies are on the up and up, certainly in this part of the world. Okay? And the other thing to note is this doesn't actually show you how to make the transition from one stage of development to another, and also that not every technology goes through a roller coaster ride. Some technologies are pretty smoothly adopted. Okay? So you might be asking, well, okay, why did we put this slide up? As lawyers, we tend to focus on detail. We tend to lose sight of the big picture. And when we talk about Web3 and blockchain, it's really difficult to get a handle on where we stand on all of this. And so the purpose of giving you this slide was at least to give you a starting point on the big picture. Is it the only interpretation? No, not at all. But certainly for lawyers and other people who are trying to get a grip on Web3 and blockchain, this offers some sort of starting point. The next thing I want to talk about as part of the regional tour is BRICS, the BRICS countries. BRICS Plus now consists of 10 countries. Depending on who you read and what you read, there's an attempt to enlarge that organization from anything from 35 to 65 countries. Why is this important in the context of fintech and crypto? Well, it's really because what's happening to the US dollar, what's happening to US foreign policy. We've seen over the last couple of years a very, very aggressive stand being taken by the US in respect of the dollar. The Ukraine war, I think, marked the bifurcation of the global financial system between the US dollar and the euro on one hand, and the renminbi, the ruble, and the Indian rupee on the other. And that bifurcation, I would suggest, is going to be permanent. But in addition to that, there is a misconception about what BRICS is doing financially and geopolitically. Mainstream media tends to portray BRICS as the enemy of the West. They're anti-West, they're anti-American, and they're anti the US dollar. That's not true. It's actually more nuanced than that. What's happened over time is that the US dollar, not only has it been weaponized, but since it was removed from its convertibility to gold in 1971, which was supposed to be temporary, by the way, since it was removed from that gold link, monetary historians have told you that the US dollar has lost 97% of its value. So where you have a rapidly depreciating currency, which is also being rapidly weaponized, subject to sanctions, and yet still ranks as global reserve currency, it's not surprising that the global majority are considering alternatives. And one of the wake-up calls to the global majority was when the United States and the European Union froze the assets of the Russian central bank following the attack on Ukraine that was launched by Russia. As the Russians pointed out, our central bank is a state organization. The fact that you froze our assets and are now thinking of confiscating them constitutes an act of war. That was a major wake-up call, because you have countries that are holding large amounts of their foreign reserves in US dollars, and if they don't follow what the US tells them, those reserves can be frozen. So what BRICS is really all about, I would suggest, is not that it's anti-American, anti-Western, anti-dollar, but really is a search for alternatives in a shifting world. Now, right now, we know that the US is a global reserve currency, but monetary historians will also tell you that global reserve currencies come and go. So you have currently the US dollar. Before that, there was pound sterling. Before that, there was the French franc. Before that, there was the Spanish peso. And before that, there was the Dutch guilder. So when you're looking at evolutionary trends in geopolitics, when you're looking at weaponization of US dollars, when you're looking at unilaterally imposed sanctions, remember, these are US sanctions. They're not UN sanctions. And yet, if you don't comply with these sanctions, you face secondary sanctions. You face tertiary sanctions. So what it's doing is utterly disrupting the global financial system. Even SWIFT, the financial messaging system, has been hijacked by the US to cut countries off: China, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, anyone that the US doesn't like. So BRICS and the emerging multipolarity is really all about the search for alternatives. And where does that come in? What do these alternatives look like? Well, number one, bilateral currency arrangements. Number two, increasing trade use of the yuan, the Russian ruble, the Indian rupee. Number three, central bank digital currencies. And number four, crypto.
So I'd like to hand the mic over now to Kevin. And Kevin's, I think you had some thoughts on what Sanjeev was talking, and also you were going to talk a little bit about sort of Hong Kong's efforts at you know, sort of the successes and you know, things that could be done further in Hong Kong's legislative efforts to promote virtual assets. So Kevin, if you could share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Basil, and thank you, Sanjeev. Well, morning, everyone. So first of all, this is only my third time wearing a tie since I joined in the crypto industry 4 years ago. And the last two times I was actually meeting the government officials, so I really taking this really seriously. And I have a lot of respect with the full house of lawyers. I want to echo back to like what Sanjeev just mentioned about the hype cycle. I'm sure a lot of you like actually heard about the governments talking about a crypto maybe like 2 years ago at the Fintech week, where like coincidentally SBF was actually making an appearance on a panel in the Fintech week, which is also his last appearance, public appearance before he got arrested. Since then, we don't talk about that much, but like I can rest assure you that like the legislative effort and the regulatory framework in Hong Kong are actually quite robust and comprehensive. Like, so first of all, a lot of you would know like the securities, like the Securities and Futures Commission, as the SFCs, has a really good already like framework for like stock market, equities market where I came from. They just adapt pretty much the whole framework, right? So like dealings in securities, they use like dealing in cryptos, advisory, access management, exchange, they just reuse the same framework. And then we have HKMA looking after the stablecoin. We may coming up with customs department looking after the OTC business as well. So like, it's just not only the things, the hype that you see, there's a lot of efforts being done behind the back. And if there's one thing that you actually remember and want to bring it home to make you sound smart, this is the one thing, right? In my majority of my career, I don't praise the SFC that much, but like this is the one thing I do think that they're doing it really, really good, is that essentially the regulatory framework in virtual access, they give you 2 licenses. It's a dual license arrangement. So one license for the security token, and the other license is for the non-security token. And why is it that good is that in Hong Kong, we go beyond the debate whether or not individual token is a security or not. And you probably heard about that on the news about other jurisdictions. They're just trying to argue whether or not Bitcoin is a security, or Ethereum is a security, or Solana is a security. We don't do this in Hong Kong. Basically, they give you 2 licenses, and you deal with it, right? So if today Solana is a non-security, and tomorrow they just like change the white paper and just like declare themselves as securities, the operator is still protected, the user are still protected, right? So this is really good framework. I think we, in a way, that's more advanced than any other jurisdictions for like at least like 18 months in that regard. And as a very good byproduct, that's also mean in Hong Kong, we have a really comprehensive security token framework where that's why like tokenization and securitizations of like different access and real-world access is such a big topic in Hong Kong. So I think that's something that we have to recognize and we have to promote quite a bit just for Hong Kong's sake. And for the not so good, right? So I guess where we come back to like Sanjeev's point, like about breaks, but like also I see like some of the early adoptions of cryptocurrencies coming from developing countries. One of the earliest real business use case I see is like in Indonesia or like more like Southeast Asia country where you see they're like teens, really skilled teens. They would just like have the like free time just like doing freelance programming or like building a website for people. And it's tough for them to receive money and it's tough for them to, spend money because they may not have bank accounts or like credit cards. And all they want to do is just like do some easy programming for like whoever in the world and then they just like buy computer games online. And that's why like crypto come in, it's really good for them to just use it. It's not about like, I know early days, everyone's talking about crypto is about like illegal transactions, crime, buying drugs, but this is like a more like legitimate use case. The other one I heard from Argentina actually, as all of you know, there's a hyperinflation in the last 5 years already. So the Argentine peso's been like depreciating a lot, right? So you have this official exchange rate to the US dollar, which you will never actually get it from the banks. You have this black market rate, which is crazily bad. So what they do is like they are being forced into using crypto. They just like as a store of values, they have to preserve the values of their savings. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because in Hong Kong, we kind of spoil. We spoil with our efficiency. So we're talking about payment service. We can use Octopus, credit cards, Alipay, PayMe, Google Pay, like whatever. You just like, you jump into, anywhere, you can just pay with whatever in your pocket. So why would you want to add another thing like cryptocurrency into your payment method, right? So I think that's a challenge in a way that's good, while we spoil in a way that's we don't need cryptocurrency.
So what are we doing? Why is Hong Kong promoting cryptocurrency when we don't need it? I mean, Argentina and Indonesia, I hear what you're saying. Why are we doing all this legislation to promote cryptocurrency when we have already an established financial system?
Like Basil, because like we're feeding off to like actually the next point. Just like that's why we see, well, obviously we're in a legal summit right here. I think in the world we lack two things. Is like really comprehensive regulatory framework for the whole ecosystem in Web3, not just cryptocurrency, not just virtual assets, but like everything. We'll probably touch on DAO and like other things in crypto as well. That's one thing that we can do better. We can do better in Hong Kong. The other thing is Hong Kong, as it stands, I know people talking, like not just talking really badly about like the situation in Hong Kong right now, but still we have a decades of experience in the traditional finance. And I still do think that Hong Kong is a way that have the best opportunity to integrate the new world, the cryptocurrency market, with the traditional finance.
Can I just follow up on Kevin's point,
sure,
Basil, as to why we need crypto? And Kevin's raised a good point here, and I'll just expand on it. One of the reasons that Hong Kong is embracing crypto is by virtue of its status as one country, two systems, a special administrative region. We have permission from mainland China to develop the crypto market, even though crypto itself is banned in China. Now, the reason we have permission is because China is on the hunt for technology. Now, they've already used part of the Bitcoin technology for the development of their central bank digital currency. And it's in their interests, therefore, to use Hong Kong as the window for additional technology which can help them financially and in other respects. And that is one of the reasons that I would suggest that Hong Kong is exploring crypto.
Thank you. Maybe I could ask Nick to talk a little bit about what's happening offshore in the development of the crypto markets, and we can come back to, I know, Kevin, you had some points about securitization versus tokenization. I look forward to understanding the difference because they seem very similar concepts to me. But Nick, maybe you can touch a little bit about what's happening in the Marshall Islands. It seems to be a popular destination for DAOs. What is DAO? Is that like a Taoist concept? What is it,
Yeah, thanks, Basil.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
So normally we see a lot of crypto projects being formed in the BVI and Cayman Islands, but the Marshall Islands itself has been a fintech innovator for a number of years. I suppose the first thing people ask me is where exactly is the Marshall Islands? I'm not sure if anyone here in the audience knows, but it's located between Australia and Hawaii. It's an independent nation with its own seat at the United Nations. Traditionally, it's known as a shipping registry, one of the top 3 international flags for flagging commercial vessels. But the Marshall Islands is, for lawyers that are familiar with US corporate laws, would be very used to working with the Marshall Islands because its laws are all based on Delaware laws, and the Marshall Island looks to the common law decisions of the Delaware courts for guidance on matters where they don't have decisions in its own courts. So the Marshall Islands began its fintech journey in 2018 when they launched their own Sovcoin, which was a national digital asset. It's not a central bank digital asset, so it's quite touching on the points that Sanjeev mentioned today about those BRICS countries issuing their own coins. Sadly, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, put up some opposition to the Marshall Islands issuing this Sovcoin. and they asked that the Marshall Islands strengthen its financial frameworks before they proceed and issue that coin. But fast forward to 2021, the Marshall Islands introduced specific laws allowing for the formation of limited liability companies operating as DAOs. DAOs is an abbreviation for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. I don't know if anyone here wants to take a crack at summarizing what a DAO is. But there's a lot of definitions, but I guess in the amount of time we have, it's essentially, as the name says, decentralized organization where you don't have a central management or board of directors. There's no officers. All the decisions are made by the members of this DAO, who in essence are issued with a token, and that token entitles them to vote on matters that are proposed and decided on the blockchain.
So the more tokens you hold, the more it's like shares. So the more tokens you hold, the more voting rights you have. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's very similar to if you held shares in a company or membership interest in a traditional LLC.
Yeah.
But the issue with DAOs is that a lot of them are unincorporated associations, and this came to a head.
But just like a listed company, who controls the issuance of the tokens? That's the question, right?
Yeah, these are topics that are always difficult to answer. Yeah.
So we've had some very interesting litigation over a DAO sort of a litigation in Hong Kong, quite a landmark decision. You'll find it on our website if you want to read about it. I think I don't know whether Sanjeev, you wanted to say a little bit about this. What's going on with this? What was this DAO litigation about?
Following on from Nick's point, nobody quite knows what a DAO is. It's not a limited liability company. It's not a partnership. It's not an incorporated partnership. It's not a charity. It's nothing else. So the latest case, very recently, decided in Hong Kong, concerned the supervision of a DAO. And basically what it was the creation of a financial platform for the trading of cryptocurrencies. And the management and running of this financial platform was delegated to certain people to run. And in return for running that financial platform, these people, the defendants, were supposed to report to the plaintiff as to how many assets they were holding, what their trades were, what the current balance was, and so on. And as time went on, the people running the investment platform stopped reporting. And so those who had delegated the function came to court and said, hey, what is going on here? We don't know what's going on with our assets in this DAO. We need some relief, and the relief that they sought from the court was an accounts disclosure order. Now, it's important to point out here that this was not a full trial. This was an interim application to go to court and say, we don't know what's going on. We are completely in the dark.
So it was just a mandatory injunction then, basically, right?
It wasn't an injunction. Well, yes, it was a mandatory injunction phrased as an accounts disclosure order. In other words, show us what you've got, show us your assets. And the court took a very interesting view. They said, look, this is an interlocutory application. It's an interim application. We're not here to consider the substantive merits of what is a DAO, what is the nature of the legal relationships between the parties in this DAO. We've got a situation where the plaintiff has come to us and said, I am in the dark about what I delegated these guys to do in relation to my financial platform, and they have an obligation to report to me as per the agreements. They haven't fulfilled these agreements. I don't know what's going on with my assets, and I want an accounts disclosure order.
And they got the order.
They got the order.
They got the order. My sort of take on this is that the judge, I think, did an excellent job, because the times we've gone to the High Court for crypto litigation, there was once the judge just said very honestly to us, I have no idea what this crypto is. Could somebody explain it to me? So we had at the back had to explain to our barrister, and then our barrister would just take what we said and then tell it to the judge. And I think we did a better job than the big international firm who was on the other side. I noticed we're kind of running down on time. I just want to talk about something that has been a very hot topic in Hong Kong, which is tokenization of real-world assets. I think many of you have probably heard about it. I think Kevin had some thoughts on the difference, because tokenization to me seems like securitization, but using digital tokens and the blockchain to encode the ownership rights to the underlying assets. But I think, Kevin, you have some thoughts on what's tokenization versus securitization.
Yeah, well, I feel like really compelled to actually give some legal advice in the legal summit.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But no, so like the reason I brought this up is because like we've seen in the news that the SEC in the US trying to sue OpenSea, which is an NFT marketplace. And NFT to a lot of you is just like more like a digital art. And how would that be sued by the SSC, saying they are basically running a platform for securities, right? So I know, like, as much as I hate Gary Gensler and try to prove him wrong, but like there's like still some, like technologically that's still like a reason why this might be a case where like tokenization and securitizations are two different things. Obviously, you would say like it's just like a tokenized form of like securities. It's just a different representation of the underlying, but also in a way that you can have the underlying not being a securities, but in the process of tokenizing it, it becomes a securities. So it done by the magic called like smart contract. I will not go into it details, but basically in a smart contract, you can say, well, you tokenize this asset, real-world asset, digital art, but by doing it, holding the tokens, you may actually earn passive incomes, yield. And suddenly that's come really close to securities, the definition of securities. And the reverse can be true as well. You can tokenize a bunch of actual securities and make it become non-securities. Obviously, that's like not likely the case in a lot of scenarios. But to know the difference would actually help you guide like what you're trying to do.
But it goes back to the question that we talked about earlier. Why is crypto not being adopted? Rather, the other way. Why is crypto being adopted more actively and more broadly in places like Indonesia and Argentina, and perhaps less of a use case for crypto in Hong Kong? In Hong Kong, we already have a very developed securities market. There's securitization, which many of the banks are doing already. There's many ways to convert assets into a securitized form. Yeah. Why use tokens? Yeah. Why tokenize?
Yeah, very good questions. I'll just use 30 seconds to just make a case. So in securities, when you trade with your broker, what kind of commission they're charging you these days? Like probably free of commissions, like 5 basis points. When you buy properties, that's what like stamps like what 1%. If you go into luxury watches, going to like actually art, you go into Christie or Sotheby's, they charge you like 60% commission or like up to 100%, depends on your buyer or the seller. So it is a very inefficient market in some of the different like asset class, like alternative asset. So to tokenize it and make it more transparent, make it more traceable so that you know the market better than just the experts in those fields. So that's a way to actually use tokens to transact.
I've always thought that one of the problems that I think many of the people in this room might be from financial intermediaries, tokenization is a risk and an opportunity because it could disintermediate some of the financial intermediaries. The other thing it might do is provide direct access to recourse against, for example, bond issuers. I think many of us have seen the Chinese real estate bonds issues, defaults, and the difficulties that bondholders have had with suing bond issuers. Tokenization of those bonds would actually provide. So it's good and bad for the good for the bondholders, but bad for the bond issuers because it disintermediates the bond custodian, for example, allowing direct access to the issuer.
Can I just make a quick
Sure.
point? I think Kevin raised the point that security tokens offer yield. Okay, that should be contrasted with another token, if you like, which is the stable coin, where
Yes.
you are not allowed to pay interest at all. And in fact, that is reflected in the very latest legislative proposals by the Hong Kong government.
So under the stablecoin proposal, which we've been waiting for a while, I think,
Yeah, they're going to make it standalone legislation. It's going to be different to the SFC ordinance, going to be different to stored value facilities, but they've made it very clear you cannot pay interest on the stablecoin, and furthermore, a third party cannot pay interest either.
Because I've gotten this question quite often, is a stablecoin a security? Because, Tether last year and Circle, I think, started publishing audited financial statements. So if it's backed by assets, it would be a security. But I think the stablecoin legislation will put it firmly under a payment.
I hope so, because what the conclusions to the consultation paper said was that the stablecoin was a digital representation of an underlying asset. Unless I missed something, it didn't actually use the word security. It was more interested in the quality of the reserve asset that was backing the stablecoin.
Okay. I want to sort of change tracks a little bit, but really still in the tech, as I mentioned at the beginning of this panel, the tech part of Fintech. I was actually at a HKGCC talk yesterday attended by a few folks like S3 and Alipay, and they gave talks about how they're using AI. It was a fintech talk as well, but they're using AI to transform financial technology from things like AML, KYC, due diligence, to of course, documentation, which all of us, I think, are involved in some way or the other. But also in customer service to financial services customers and so on and so forth. I don't know whether Kevin, any of the Nick, Sanjeev, any of you have any thoughts on AI? I mean, my personal concern about AI is and we are putting out a feature paper later this year on AI regulations and ethics. So if you are interested in getting a copy of our paper, which will be published in one of the legal publications, please leave your card with us outside at our booth, or else sign up on our website and subscribe on our website, and you'll get a copy of our feature paper, which is otherwise, for the legal publication. But any of our speakers here have any thoughts on AI ethics, the rollout impact of AI on fintech, on the financial markets, on how we use financial services?
Well, I'll make a quick one. So like the short answer is, if you or your company is not using AI in any way, shape, or form already, you're already behind the curve, right? So that's the short answer. The long answer is it's actually tough for like the corporates coming in. They don't care about the current debate, like for example, like whether or not like OpenAI is better, or like Gemini is better, or Claude is better. There's all infrastructure layer discussion. Corporates only cared about application layer, where like, can you give me something I can plug and play, and then I can fire like a team of people and save costs. I think that's the one thing that we're waiting for that. The second thing is, obviously, we mentioned it earlier this morning before the panel, is that there's obviously legal and compliance concern of the data being used. So like every corporate will want a standalone enterprise solutions that only host the data within the parameters of their own company. They still want to train the data with their own data, and potentially with external data as well, but they don't want the internal data to go externally. I think that's a package they're waiting for to go mainstream.
Yeah, I think Kevin is right on that one. Just to expand on that point, law firms are developing their own internal generative AI, and so are the law firms' clients. And the two systems are not necessarily compatible. And it also causes trouble as to, well, how much is a lawyer going to charge when their own AI systems are working in conjunction with the client's own AI systems. So it's going to change the model. AI is going to change the revenue model of law firms, and the and the way in which clients instruct their law firms.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of versatility for using AI. I've had a bit of a play around on our closed system AI models, and I think it has a real utility to assist lawyers in being more efficient, getting their jobs done. It can spit out, documents in seconds, letters, affidavits, and that sort of thing. But I think it really does take a trained user to read what the AI generates, because it does hallucinate, it makes things up, it lies, and you've got to be careful how you use it at this point in time. But I think it's just going to get more and more sophisticated, and I think the real risk will be to the trainees that we normally get to do this work.
Yeah, thanks to all the panelists for that very enlightening, interesting discussion. I mean, on the final note, there's no doubt at all that the AI is going to transform not just the legal industry, in-house work, but also, generally the way that we live our lives. I recommend a book which I'm actually in the middle of getting through. It's called The Singularity is Nearer by Ray Kurzweil. It's quite a long book, it's quite technical, but it sort of gives you a glimpse of how quickly things are going to accelerate over the next 5 years or so. All right, thanks everyone, and thanks to our panelists for today's talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So before we end this session, do we have any questions from the floor to the panelists?
Oh yes, does anyone have any questions?
Can somebody ask me about Trump? Because we had a really good...
Trump was one of our topics, but we ran out of time, unfortunately.
We ran out of time, and we had such a great time upstairs talking about Trump and what he's going to do about Bitcoin. So if somebody would like to ask a question about Trump and Bitcoin, I'm sure Kevin and I will be happy to answer it. Thank you so much. I thought you'd never ask. Trump showed up a couple of weeks ago at Bitcoin Nashville in 2024. He was not the only celebrity to show up. Robert Kennedy Jr., who at that time was a presidential candidate, showed up, and also Cynthia Lummis, who is a very crypto-friendly senator, showed up. Trump came in and nailed his colors to the crypto mast, and what he said was, I am going to make the United States the crypto capital of the world. Number two, I'm going to make the United States the crypto mining capital of the world. Number three, on my first day in office, I'm going to fire Gary Gensler. Number four, on my first day in office, I'm going to set up a crypto advisory council. And number five, and here's where it gets interesting, I'm going to make Bitcoin a strategic reserve asset. And I'm going to order that the Bitcoins that are held in the US possession can never be sold. Now, consider this. The US actually has two levels of Bitcoin. One is a small stash of Bitcoin that they already hold, which is only about $5 billion. But the second and more interesting stash of Bitcoins is 210,000 Bitcoin, which they confiscated from criminals and bad actors. And that apparently is worth something like 16 billion. Now, he wants to create a strategic asset reserve. So does Cynthia Lummis. So does Robert Kennedy. Robert Kennedy wants to buy 500 Bitcoin per day. Okay? Now, when you have American politicians like Trump using the word strategic reserve asset, it's a pretty clear indication to me that the writing is on the wall for the US dollar. Because right now, since 1971, when Nixon cut the gold link, the US dollar has not been backed by anything except, quote, full faith and confidence. With what Trump is proposing to do, but he's not saying it, is to effectively link the US dollar to Bitcoin, which he sees as an inflation-proof asset.
Yeah, well, exactly that. So, let me chip in. Just give you a context of what Trump actually promised, right? So, imagine there's 10 things that's in the crypto community, especially in the US, want in the last 5 years. Trump literally just hit 8. So, again, put it into context. If my wife asked me to say 10 things to make her happy, and I do 8 things right, I consider myself a really good husband. But consider Trump, right? So was he briefed? Are there a team of people just helping him to come up with the points? Probably. Yep. Is he going to keep the promise when he wins, or if he wins? we don't know, so your guess is as good as mine. But the thing is, we see that, like, give the context, right? So Vice President Harris also being invited to the Bitcoin conference as well, and she declined the offer. And obviously we see that presidential debate yesterday. So what happened is, as soon as Trump said something about illegal immigrants eating cats, and the probability of he winnings drop, we see, like, at the same minutes, by the way, obviously Bitcoin trade 24/7. At the same minutes, we see Bitcoin's actually dropping about like 1.5% as well. So like we see how like political influence of the national policy will affect the crypto world quite a bit, and in that regard, obviously, I'll like really confidently say China is not dumb. They know that like whatever the policies in the US going to happen by this November will affect the world as well, and they will probably act accordingly. And in Hong Kong, which pretty much as a proxy of like just like Sanjeev just mentioned, as a proxy where we will be able to do we have a lot of leeway to make cryptocurrency works, virtual assets works by regulations. I think that would be interesting to see what happened in the next year.
So on that cryptic note, and if you want the real answer as to what to do with Bitcoin or cryptocurrency before and after the November elections, please come and talk to Kevin as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Please give it up to Basil and our esteemed panelists.